Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Profotech Solutions team. I am Sanjay. We are learning CodeIgniter Framework Beginners tutorial and this is our part 17. Inside this video session guys, we will discuss about difference between base URL and site URL of CodeIgniter functions. And also guys, if you're a beginner to the channel, then please don't forget to subscribe and keep watching our previous video sessions to get the clear concept about CodeIgniter Framework tutorial. So if I back to browser, so basically guys, this is the form that we have developed in our last video where we have seen that how can we use our form helper and generate the CodeIgniter form. So if I back to editor, now this is our controller. Inside this controller, this is the method that we have called, and this is not .php. If I remove that, user/form and just go here, and this is form.php. Actually guys, we did a mistake in our last video, is something that we have appended the file name with .php, but we have to remove that. This was a mistake that we did in our last video, so need to correct first. So I have removed the .php symbol from here, and again if I reload this page, now it is working fine. Back to editor. Now inside this form, we are going to use the concept of base URL and site URL. So what basically it is? So firstly to use these functions called base URL and site URL, we need to load our helper, and the helper is something called URL helper. So back to editor. Let's say that we are going to use our URL helper inside this user.php controller, means user controller. So how can we add our helper here? So to add any new helper inside this, we need to write it here, but remember these are the two parameters. So we have to store all these things inside array. It means that we can load multiple helpers by passing an array inside this helper method. After loading URL helper, now we can access or use our site URL and base URL function. So if I go here, because this is a method, actually we have opened something called helpers form. If I go here, this is helpers form. By getting this route, we have opened called user controller, and this is form helper study method inside this controller. So inside this controller, if I write, let's say echo something called base URL, and if I save this file, back to our browser, reload this page. Now as we can see that this is the path actually returned by base URL. So if I back here, again if I write something, let's say echo, this is br tag to break the line, and let's say echo something, we have the next function is something called site URL. So if I save this file, back here, reload this page, now as we can see there is a little bit difference between these two functions. Site URL function returns the URL with index.php, but base URL is not returning any index.php inside this URL section. Right now we are getting the URL something called http:// this is : 1, and this is our project setup. So what basically it means? So if I copy this route, go to slide, open a new tab, and this is our localhost IP address. So if I replace with it something, if I go here, this is the symbol basically indicates about 127.0.0 and 0.1. This is our local IP address of our site URL. So we need to replace all these things from here, and we need to replace it here. So basically this is what it indicates, what we have seen here. So how can we change the project URL with this URL? So if I copy that, go to editor. Now we have to open, just go inside our config folder. We have a file something called config.php. So if I open this file, scroll here. Now inside this base URL index, we need to put actually our base URL what we are using. So inside this, if I let's say put it something called http localhost unlearn CI, this is our project setup. Instead of localhost IP, we actually are going to get the localhost on the URL. So back to browser, reload this page. Now as we can see that the URL IP has been changed. Again if I back to our controller, now inside this controller, as we have studied about that we need to load the URL helper first before using this. So if I suppose get rid of that, save this file, back here, reload this page. Now as we can see that we have error. Error is that call to undefined function base URL. Again, if I go here, comment that. Now again reload, as we have the same error but this time for the site URL. It means that if we are going to use this base URL and site URL, we need to load our URL helper first. Now the next question in our mind is that why actually we are learning about these two functions like base URL and site URL. So if I back to slides, now inside these slides we have some points actually to study on the behalf of site URL and base URL. So what we have seen so far, site URL basically returns the base URL, index.php and the URL string. This is basically not seen so far because we have not appended any parameters inside the URL. So site URL basically return the base URL plus index.php. Go to browser, reload this page once more, and this is site URL. This is something as our base URL. Here it is something base URL and the index.php is concatenated with that. If I back again to slides, now base URL returns only the base URL, and also if any parameters inside our URL, then it will return those query string parameters. So why we are learning about site URL and base URL? So just read these two lines. To add our assets file in our HTML forms, as we have seen that we have a form right now, it is distorted, but if we want to attach any of the JS file, any of the CSS file to decorate that, then we need to use in that condition something called our base URL, because base URL does not return index.php. So in that function we need to attach with our assets file. But suppose we are making an application. Inside that application, we are going to use our AJAX calls, also our form routes. So if I back to editor again, go to form.php. Now inside this form, as we have seen so far in our last video that if we are going to pass the first parameter is the route, so we can use the site URL also here. So if I cut it from here and let's say site URL, inside this site URL function, we are going to pass this route. So this route, so site URL basically we can use with the form, also with the AJAX calls, means the calling of our methods. But basically when we want to attach our CSS file or any of the assets file like images, JavaScript, so we can use base URL instead of site URL. So now next question we have that why should I use base URL to attach our assets file? Why not site URL? So if I back to browser, now this is our Bootstrap form section of the Bootstrap library. If I click on try it yourself, because we are going to use or decorate this simple form to our Bootstrap form. So simply if I click on test try it yourself, this is the link actually open. So if I copy all these contents from here, back here, again go to our views folder. Inside this views folder, I'm going to make a include folder, or we have still there. So inside it, if I make a file, something let's say that include form. If I press enter, there is spelling mistake, so we have to rename it firstly. So this should be include form. So if I get rid of all these things, okay, include form. So if I get rid of all these things, pasting it here, so this is the content actually we have copied from the Bootstrap site. Okay, so I'm going to load this include form inside this form.php, and form.php file basically it is the interface of that file. So we are going to attach this include form inside this file. So how can we attach that? So go at the top. Either we can use include here, or let's say that this, let's say this load view, and inside this view method we are going to pass the path of that. So basically this file is inside views folder. Inside views folder we have include folder, and inside this include folder we have a file something called include form.php. So .php is not necessary to pass with a file name. It will automatically load with that. So if I save this file, back to browser, reload this page, so we have some errors, unable to load the requested file. So let me clear that. So if I back to editor, So basically I think that this file is now inside this include folder. So we have no views folder because by default this view method automatically picks the path inside this folder. So we don't need to pass views here. Again I'm reloading this page. Now as we can see that this is vertical form. This is vertical form. This is our bootstrap form. What we have supplied a form or included this HTML page inside this form. Now we are going to rename some like something here. So this is all about form. In CI, I am removing these meta tags. After removing those, we need to download these files like bootstrap.min.css, jquery.min.js, and finally the bootstrap.min.js. So already we have downloaded these files. So if I back to folder structure, inside this assets folder right now, assets folder was not there. I have downloaded these 3 files and made a folder called assets inside our project setup and put it all those files inside here. So after making assets folder, we have made 2 folders again called CSS and JS folder. Inside the CSS folder, this is the file, and inside JS folder, this is the file. So now we are going to include these files to our file, something called include form.php. So if I go here and if I pass the path, something here, let's say we are going to use called in echo something called base URL. After putting base URL, as we know that the site URL is returned, this base URL does not include index.php. Okay, again I'm going to just go at the last and let's say that we are going to again use call echo something called base URL and write it here. Also again if I go here and remove this HTTPS and let's say that PHP, this is something base URL. So base URL basically returns the path up to something called our index.php. So if I make some zoom, this is our base URL. So base URL basically returns up to the folder structure. Go to folder structure. This is all about learn CI. After inside this folder, we have to go inside assets folder. So back to editor. Let's include called assets folder. Also we have to go assets folder and inside JS folder, assets folder and JS folder. So if I save all these files and also let's say that form helper, or just remove this header tag from here. I am also removing this action and put the hashtag here. So if I save this file and for now I am going to go inside this form.php and remove all these contents from here. So if I cut all these things from here, back here, pasting it here. Now if I reload this page, go at the editor and save this file. So only inside this form.php we have loaded our form called include form. Inside this form we have made a bootstrap form and also included these 3 our assets file using our base URL. So go here, reload this page. Now as we can see that this is the bootstrap form. So if I press Ctrl U to get the source code, so inside this source code, these are the assets that we have attached. So if I click on these links, successfully as we can see that we have attached our bootstrap.min.css file. Again if I click on jquery.min.js, this is the file that we have attached. Now if I suppose change this base URL into site URL, so just to save this file, pasting it here, save here. Now if I save this file, back to our browser, reload this page. Now as we can see that inside these 2 lines we have used our site URL and also go here and we have to put a /. Why? Because as we have seen that after index.php we have no / to assets folder. So as we can see that site URL basically attached before assets file, it returned the index.php. So if I press this file does not find, because as we know that this is not here. This is the file basically inside assets folder, and this assets folder we can access by going through this project setup folder. So it means that we have to remove this index.php from the URL. So if I remove it here and save this file, as we can see that this is our CSS file right here. It means that we have not to use called site URL to attaching any of the asset file in our project setup, because it returns index.php while returning to the URL. So base URL is used to attach our assets file, and if you are going through our Ajax calls or the form helpers, then we need to use called the site URL in those cases. So if I cut this container from here, so if I cut all these things from here, go at this form.php, and I'm going to paste all the things right here. So if I save this file, go here, reload this page. Now as we can see that it is working fine. So if I get rid of all these things, because as we know that inside our previous form we have called name and the email section. So if I copy again and pasting it here, so this time this is name, and let's say that txt underscore name, and this is input type text, and we have the name parameter something called txt name, and also copy this name, go here, change the ID, and also we have to change our placeholder. So let's say that this is our, let's say, enter name. So get rid of this name parameter from here because we have already passed that. So inside this email section, enter email, and we need to change only called txt email. So if I copy this here, go here and just pasting it here. And also if I back to slides, these are the things that we have passed. So if I copy all these things to declare a form tag, go here. Instead of this, if I reload all these things here, go at the bottom, and let's say that this is something called echo, and finally we have to use called form close. Now if I save all these things from here, so successfully, as we know that we don't have to pass all these parameters, only the site URL is okay. So back to browser, reload this page. Now if I pass, let's say, online, Web Tutor, and email address, we have something here. If I press submit, as we can see that this is the form submitted data. So successfully guys, inside this video we understood about the important section of base URL and site URL, and also we have changed our simple form using bootstrap form, and also inside this include section we have attached all the bootstrap necessary files using base URL function. So inside this video guys, if you have any doubt, then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day.